All right, my friends, welcome to another episode of the RPG Backlog, the podcast series where we go through RPGs in our backlog and we play them and talk about them. Here, it is episode 6 of Final Fantasy Adventure, which is really episode 5 because we had an episode 0. So this is the finale of Final Fantasy Adventure, the first mana game, which is perfect timing for Trials of Mana coming out. Tonight, I'm joined by Anthony. Did I say Visions? Trials? It's fucking Visions.
It's Visions.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that was Anthony, joined by Anthony, and over there's Tom.
Hello.
And they're here to keep me honest. It's Something of Mana is coming out, and Something of Mana is on our collection, which is the Visions. Trials of Mana is on our collection. Secret of Mana is on our collection, but Correct. Vision of Mana is coming out soon. So this week for the finale, we are rolling through to the end of the game. We are talking about the Undersea Volcano, the Caves of Ruin, Dime or Dime Tower, however you want to pronounce that, Tower of Gemma, moving on to the Mana Tree, and then the fight with Julius and perhaps another Mana Tree. We will talk about that ending. So overall thoughts? Or do you want to dig in piece by piece? What do y'all think?
Let's. My vote for piece by piece, and then maybe we sum it up at the end.
All right. Well, we're going to start with the Undersea Volcano, which was a pretty long dungeon. Where at the end,
give an overall thought on they're all pretty long dungeons here on out. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, maybe too long.
But yeah, this one was like, I think, the one before it, there was the Dark Castle was pretty long as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Ice Cave wasn't insane, but
So I alluded to this, I think I mentioned this last week, but I'll mention it again now that you have both done Undersea Volcano. I'll tell you what makes that dungeon even longer is when you finish it, and then you check the guide and you realize you missed both the Zeus axe and the ice armor. I don't know if the armor came from there, but the axe definitely did.
Yes, the axe does.
Yep, the Zeus axe is from there.
I basically had to play at least half, maybe 2/3 of that over again.
No. See, and I will tell you, Tom. When you mentioned that last week, I played this section with a guide in front of me. I was not going to do that.
But it was okay. Then the second time went faster, I should say, because my big revelation was I should look it up. I don't know what they were called, but that Undersea Volcano had. You know how they have like little loadouts of the enemies, or at least sometimes they mix them up, but a lot of times it'll be like the little kissy bubble face and a skeleton.
Oh yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? Like they kind of come together. That one had almost everywhere in it a thing that I thought looked kind of like a bee drill, like some kind of like bug looking deal, and then something that came in and out of the floor. Do you guys remember those?
Oh yeah, yes. It has like a spiky hat or whatever, spiky head. Yeah.
Those things are, you guys, I couldn't kill them without the ice sword. They were just like massive damage sponges unless I used that ice sword.
Yeah, the ice sword was the key to the enemies in that.
Yeah, in this area it was.
I avoided them for like half the dungeon before I was like, man, I'm getting my ass kicked by these guys. What's going on? And then I finally tried the ice sword on a lark and it's like, oh, that's it.
Yeah, it's funny. The guide that I was following from Game Surge, the first sentence for Undersea Volcano is the enemies in this cave are very strong.
Yeah. Here's a little note that I had because I was like, so you get through it and there's the final boss, Ifrit. And I was like, that's interesting. That's close to Ifrit. It is a Ifrit.
Oh.
With the
interesting.
Like you go to the wiki of Mana and they're like Ifrit, also known as F-Light or Ilfite.
Oh,
in the Mana, but it's just whatever. Early on, they didn't, of course, have this stuff canonized.
Yeah, sure.
Square. So, but it's free.
So you
which
should
makes sense.
If you haven't, this is I guess what Final Fantasy fandom. They have a big list of all of the bosses with their sprites as well as their illustrations, which I don't remember seeing in the manual, and it would be weird to have them all there, like spoiling it, but the art must have been done at the same time because it matches what we saw in there. Anyway, Iflit's is it's pretty sick. He's on fire and has got his like weird blue tongue hanging out and stuff like that.
That makes a lot of sense. I like that boss fight. He like rolls into the ball and rolls around the screen, if I remember correctly.
And then you get that useless sword.
You get that rusty sword.
Yeah. Which is actually not that bad. I equipped it just on a lark at some point, and it does. I mean, most of your stuff is doing like, I don't know, 80 or 90 damage at this point in the game. Mm-hmm. The rusty sword, I think, did like 70 or something. So it's not. It was. I thought I was going to do like 2 or something.
That's interesting. Cause I don't think I used it as a rusty sword. I used it when I was Excalibur later, but yeah, I didn't use it early on.
Yeah, it's jumping ahead a little bit, but I was maybe disappointed isn't quite the right word, but like you only get the good sword at like the very end.
Sure, yeah. They tease that one out quite a ways.
It would have been more fun to have it for like a dungeon or so before, and then maybe it gets like super power. You know, it gets even better at the end. That's fine, but yeah.
No, you're just stuck with that rusty thing for.
You start running out of space in your inventory.
Yes, you do.
I had to drop shit. I was like, I'm not going to use this thing again. I couldn't pick it up, the rusty sword. And I was like, okay, I got to drop this stuff.
And I'd been pretty good about selling like any sort of armor, but there were some things like anything that had like a special, like the silver sword. I was still holding that because I guess it was good at killing like undead or vampires.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But like I wasn't actually using it for any of that. I just didn't want to miss the option, I suppose.
Sure.
So by the end, the ice sword, I know that's useful for the lava guy. You know, I had enough of that stuff. And then there's some things, this was interesting. I thought the game was bugged, but there are things it won't let you throw away. So after I had the Zeus axe, I was like, well, I'll just throw away the battle axe. I don't need that anymore. It won't let you trash it.
Really? You couldn't get rid of it?
Yeah, which makes sense from a game won't let you like soft lock yourself somewhere.
Yeah, you need to cut a tree somewhere. They're gonna let you keep it. Yeah.
But I would have thought that they would have been kind of smart in that they just wouldn't let you sell your last axe or something like that. Yeah. But no, it's the original axe that's protected.
Yeah. Ooh, this art on Final Fantasy or FinalFantasy.fandom.com of the bosses is freaking cool.
Nice, right?
Yeah.
You see the Lich in his like sick purple robe.
Yeah, dude, he looks awesome.
Yeah.
The Mantis hat, which we'll talk about in a little bit. There's Iflit, fucking just on fire. That's cool.
And looking crazy, like.
Yeah. So after we defeat Iflit and get the rusty sword, I felt like there was just a lot of like bouncing around. You had to go to Chiba to talk to somebody, and then get the key to the tower, and then talk to Bow Wow and Ish. We had to go to Ish, and then get information about getting the nuke spell, which you have to use to progress the story.
I had a note here to that effect, basically that weirdly in this back, I don't know, quarter of the game, fifth, all of a sudden, like, exploration is really, really important. Like, leading up to this, you were essentially on rails. You could only access certain chunks of the map, but now suddenly that you've got that chocobo, it's go anywhere. And I was ill prepared for that because I never got like a real good sense of the geography of this place. And it's big. It's a big world, and there's a lot of. I think this is kind of again. Something that you're stuck with at the time, but there's a very like sameness to a lot of the tile sets that are everywhere. And they do, looking at the big one, I mean, they try, right? You've got floating rocks, you've got the crystals, you've got, trees or palm trees or things, but it wasn't enough, and I never knew where I was going. I had to look at the map.
Yeah.
I mean,
the guide for all the time.
Yeah, the guide for me was essential. The one time when I just went without a guide, I got close, but then in a spot where I couldn't get like a square over or whatever, and I was like, okay, I know I'm next to it, but I can't get there from here. I had to go all the way back around.
I was being kind of belligerent about not using, because I hadn't really used the guide up to this point. And then I sort of put off playing the game. I finished it last night, and it was like, it's like 10 till 9, and I haven't picked this up yet, and there's at least 2 dungeons I gotta get. So I was glancing at it a little bit more, but at the beginning I was like, no, I'm gonna do it the way I was doing it. And I nuked damn near every crystal in the whole desert.
Oh my
before
God.
I found that one, because it's basically it's like catty corner from where you start from Ish. And
That's
so,
right.
yeah, you go through pretty much all of it before you find that stupid one.
Yeah, it's like it's west, north, and west of Ish. So it's just right there, catty corner. That's funny. I felt the same way. Well, differently. I've looked at the guide more than you have, I think. But this week I was like, we are checking out on Thursday. Have to be done by Thursday. There's a number of things happening in the way. Like I'm going to be gone. I was in LA for a couple of concerts. One was a Final Fantasy concert, which was awesome. I need to like maximize my time.
Yes.
So I really hit the guide. Which I felt like that was better for me because I felt, like you said, the dungeons, most of them are getting longer. Then there's a lot of exploration and backtracking, and that would have driven me freaking nuts.
There's really only like you do the undersea volcano. It's pretty long. Cave of Ruins isn't that long.
No,
like caves tend to be pretty quick.
Is that what's under the crystal? Is the Cave of Ruins?
I believe so. That's the mantis.
Yeah, you go in the
boss at
hole.
the
Yeah,
end.
that's the cave. Exactly.
Okay.
And it's just and that's like where at the end there it's like you equip the rusty sword and that's what makes Dime Tower or whatever.
That was when I started looking at the guide.
You
I got to that point. And I was like, what do I do here? Like, everything with all the, just like, is it the fire, the magic spell, just like burning MP, trying to figure, and then it's like, oh, you equip the sword. It's like, okay. I'm sure Chiba said, 6 dungeons ago, you need to use the sword to raise the tower. So
exactly.
I didn't remember that at all.
Well, there was
Did you take that note? Did you take that note?
Yeah, exactly. Did you accidentally bump into that person in town 12 times and hear the same thing over and over again?
Did that person keep you from leaving when all you wanted to do was get the hell out of Dodge?
It's like Stockholm syndrome. I love you now. That part with after the mantis hat where you had to go, that was the part where you had to like go over something that damaged you, like spikes or something, I think, to get to that screen. What I wrote here is that the spikes were like 100 times worse in terms of their damage output than the mantis ant was. Well, they were, and I was underleveled through the entire game. Like if this for the final boss, it says you should be around level 60 on this guide.
Yeah,
and I was level 43 by the time I got to that boss.
Whoa!
I was severely underleveled. So
the guide is overselling it a little bit.
I think that's what. Yeah.
52 at the end, and when he's like, you need to be at 60, I was like, man, it couldn't have been any easier than it was.
I was like 56, and I was kind of saving up towards the end my own thoughts, but I didn't.
All right,
basically from mantis ant on was no. I'm like, wow, there's not even strategy to this. I have so much life, so much mana, spells, items. I'm like, I'm indestructible at this point. It feels like if I just use the items that I have, like I don't run out of life.
My experience,
I don't have to use a strategy. I'm just like smack.
And as someone who does not really, I don't know that I'm a lot of times I'm playing games for kind of the vibes and the story and the music and the, that's sort of what I'm coming to a lot of games for. And I feel like sometimes I have kind of a rougher time where it's like, oh no, this game is made for people who like really want to get the mechanics down and want to, get good sort of thing. And often that's not me. And so it was actually kind of nice to get to the end of the game and be like, no, I like ground this so hard that nothing can oppose my will now. And so I can just hack and slash my way to glory. It was pretty fun.
But my experience was totally different being underleveled, and I kind of liked it better than what you're describing.
Yeah.
So that part with the mantis ant, I had used every single resource, all my mana, all my ether, all my cure to get through that fight, or the dungeon and the fight, or whatever, the combination. So I got to the end, and I had just enough health. I barely survived. And then I walked over the spikes, and I died. And I was like, oh my God, I can't go back. I need to get over these spikes and they're going to hurt me. And then I looked at my inventory one more time. I had never used one elixir. So I used the elixir, had enough health and got over it. But I was like, fuck, if I didn't have the elixir, how could I do this? I don't know I could. I don't think I could.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. That was the only time, like, I know earlier in the podcast, like many episodes ago, I was like, oh, I didn't have a key. I felt like I was soft locked out of the game, but really there would be a key that would drop eventually. But
I have
this
a key story for you later.
Let's hear it. Oh, okay, good.
Later.
Okay, sounds good.
So yeah, we had Mantis Hand. Yeah, you had the spikes. The spikes were a pain. You had to know how to use the sword, and now we're on to Dime Tower. Unless there's anything left in Cave of Ruins, I thought that the animation of the Dime Tower coming out of the ground was pretty sweet.
It was cool.
Yeah.
For what was going on in this game, that was like, oh man, like they put some thought into it, and that helped with immersion, and it really felt like a thing that would happen in a fantasy story, and it was sort of rendered properly, and I didn't have to imagine too many of the details. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, but then you have to climb the tower.
Then you have to climb the tower.
So climbing the tower was, I forget what the animation was. Oh, you mean inside?
Inside, you actually just have to go up, and I just found it very repetitive.
Well, I'm trying to. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Like this was one I was just like, I liked. Was it the robot Marcy or Gollum? Right? That was cool. I loved how Marcy with. That was a neat robot, Marcy.
Talk about being indestructible. Like, I have infinite mana now. Like, this is even.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And that was cool, but the actual like layout and the floors and the enemies, it really, for me, I was like, the pacing started to drag a lot.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm like, okay, I think your ambitions are outstretching what you can actually do here in some ways.
So that had besides the enemies, which initially I thought were cool, and then like you said, quickly I tired of. There's an enemy set where one of it's like a snail with a little shell on his back. Mm-hmm. The other one is a mirror that shoots sumos at you. Yep. And the first time I saw that, I just was like cracking up laughing because it's that stupid animation frame of him falling is what they're shooting at you.
Yeah.
We were talking about this a couple of episodes ago. Like they got their mileage out of that sprite, man. It's like, we're going to make him fall a ton, and then
we're going to weaponize it against you.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that doppelmirror. That's what. That makes sense why it's called doppelmirror. For me in this with the enemies and the design of this piece, the one where you had to freeze the monsters on the tile that were surrounded by trees, so you had to cut the fucking tree without killing the monster.
Yeah, that was a little tough.
That took some trial and error.
I thought there's one. It might have been in Tower of Gemma, I can't remember, but there's one where you have to navigate an ice spell through. That's like
the one.
Yes. Oh my God, the freaking maze.
Yeah.
That was, and I guess it's a little bit on me because I'd used the ice spell like 5 times total before that point, so I didn't really have the feel for it.
Right, and if you mess it up, and you're like wasting your MP, and if you don't have enough resources to build it back up. But let me tell you, doing that with a Joy-Con that has Joy-Con drift was not fun. I managed it, but I was about ready to switch controllers.
Sure.
That's interesting. So you were using the stick.
I went back and forth as I played this game. I found myself sometimes using the D-pad of a Joy-Con with an actual D-pad instead of the dots. But then I'd sometimes use the stick for some reason. Yeah. I'd go back and forth.
I was dotsing the whole time.
Oh, those dots are not awesome.
No, I use the Pro controller. So.
Yeah, nice.
But yeah, that.
The end. There's the boss Garuda at the end.
Garuda, which is awesome. Another, I was like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Is he awesome?
It's a Final Fantasy summon. It's the summon of wind. It's like the standard summon of wind in the Final Fantasy series. Which I would like to know when did they put summons in to
that wasn't Final Fantasy 2?
Was 2? Did 2 have summons?
I thought 2 was what introduced it, but I could be wrong.
He's in 3, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah. 12. Yeah. So 3 was the first mainline introduction, which is, I'm pretty sure 3 is after this game.
After this game.
That could be. No, it's not. 3 is 1990. It's 1 year before this.
Okay.
So that's when they started solidifying the. So yeah, that's why you have like Ifrit and Garuda and stuff like that started being
I want
standardized.
I want to load up Final Fantasy 16 and be able to summon Mantis Ant.
Mantis Ant.
That'd be great.
Something I had totally forgotten about Garuda is that he's Davius's bird.
Oh.
Like, do you remember earlier there's some business where he gives the bird the pendant and it flies away or whatever?
Yeah.
This is like that bird, but somehow I guess it got monoized or something like that.
It's on steroids, yeah.
Yeah, I read that in the guide, and it's like, hey, it's that bird from earlier. And I was like, what bird? And it's like, that bird. Oh man, which it makes me feel bad. Like I wish I'd been paying closer attention because there are a bunch of neat little sort of callbacks, and there's more connective tissue than I think I give this game credit for. But some of that is sort of lost in the sameness of the pixels and the monotone.
Yeah,
and all that.
I think that's where I just feel like there's a lot of ambition to this game, but the technology at the time didn't really let them realize that ambition to its full extent.
That's it, because when he's a little character sprite, he looks like a little bird, right?
Yeah.
And then later he's this giant monster eagle thing, and it was, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. Yeah. And I guess the game also doesn't tell you their names.
Nope.
So how would you know?
Yeah, exactly. At the end of this was interesting because the tower's collapsing and Marcy picks you up and throws you across the gap.
Yep.
Marcy.
And then Marcy dies.
Yeah.
That was strangely affecting for you having only known her for this like one dungeon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was like maybe it's because the ending companion, but it was probably my favorite one. I don't know if they were super useful battling. They were like throwing little lances across or little like line spikes.
Laser. I thought it was lasers.
Oh, it could be lasers. That makes sense.
Yeah. Which, speaking of another art thing to check out, I gotta find it. If you go to, it's on mana.fandom, the Adventures of Mana page has all of the, they did 2 remakes of this game. They did, I can't remember what, Sword of Mana,
which is, that's the one I have, and I've played
that's like
some
kind
of
of
that
like
one.
A retelling, I think. They sort of,
it is a retelling. They expand
this
a bunch
one,
of the story.
Adventures of Mana was where they went back and tried to make a more like faithful recreation of this. They did a ton of like really beautiful art of all of the characters in this, and Marcy looks sick.
Oh, awesome.
She looks like she almost has kind of like a sort of Sheikah Guardian kind of thing from the recent Zelda games.
Yeah.
I just clicked onto the mana.fandom.com and I now put the pieces together. I'm like, who the fuck is Sumo? Who are you talking about?
Yeah, it's the main character.
It's the main character. I forgot.
What have you been calling him again? Left or right or something like that?
Yeah, it's west, and then the girl is east. It was very confusing because there was like dialogue where it was like west, east, west. Like, oh my god, I made a mistake here.
But yeah, they have a really cool, like, I guess I don't know if it's key art or what, but it's of Sumo finding Marcy in front of one of those, like, mythology tablets inside of the Dime Tower.
Oh,
and
that's really cool.
It looks really neat. Also, Amanda was apparently not wearing pants the whole time, so that's kind of fun, too.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, Marcy the robot. Mummy Seeker? Short for Mummy Seeker?
What?
Okay, I'm so confused. I'm looking at this wiki. This is interesting. I'm learning things.
But yeah, that was a cool character. That was actually, and my funny anecdote from the Dime Tower is early on you pick up Marcy, and there was some room that had like a ton of enemies, and I'm like running around trying to kill everything, and I'm like, man, this last one just won't go, and it took me about 20 seconds. I was like, oh yeah. That's Marcy.
Oh my god. So after Dime Tower, we go to the Tower of Gemma, and at that point I felt like I'm ready for this to end. It was another long area, but this area, according to the guide, some of the enemies, the samurai warriors, drop samurai armor. Did you ever get that?
Oh, nope. I got all the samurai stuff.
Oh shit! Okay, I didn't get any of it.
Well, here's where we come to my key story.
Oh, perfect.
If you look in this guide Apparently, I don't know what it said, but however many keys you needed to beat that, I had N-1.
Oh, no, you had 11 instead of 12 or whatever?
Yeah, whatever it was. And I basically, I farmed out the entire map, and I was like, I can't. There's one locked door, but half the time there's like a curing fountain behind those things, and it's like, well, I'm really low on keys. Anywho, yeah, and there's no backsies. Like once you're up that waterfall, that you cannot get out of any of that.
Oh no.
Yeah, so basically what happens is, so I'm like, okay, like this really sucks, but you sort of make your peace with it, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna leave the tower. You backtrack through all that stuff, and I eventually got back to the outside, and there's the cliff where Marcy threw you over, right? Mm-hmm. No, she throws you over, and then you go up the waterfall. Once you're up the water, I don't think you can get back down. I tried. There's some trees that you can cut with an axe, and there's just stumps you can't get out there, and then the other side is a cliff. And so that was that. A little Google search. There was some mensch on GameFAQs has a whole forum post that says, "Hey, did you run out of keys in the Tower of Gemma?"
Oh no.
It's okay. This is how you get them. And there's one room where skeletons spawn, and skeletons drop keys, and so you can go in the room, kill those guys, and leave. And we noticed how sometimes it takes like multi tiles to reset, like you have to go far away.
Yeah, exactly.
It's when you turn right around, go right back in, those people are back again, and so you just farm them in 5 minutes. I had all the keys I needed.
So the devs were like, we know this is going to happen, here's where you can farm it if y'all can figure it out. Oh wow, that's interesting. So that's why you have, well, I guess the skeletons don't drop samurai armor, but you were in there a long time.
I was going back and forth through huge chunks of the Tower of Gemma for a long time. Because that's the one, it is, that thing is massive, right? You go through all the warp portals and stuff, and there's a bunch of dragons.
Those fucking portals. Oh my God. Oh my God, those fucking, thanks. Like, I understand, like, it's great that you have this idea, and it sounds fun. And then you put it into practice, and it's like, whoa, okay.
And a little bit of it would have been okay, but there were like 12 of them, weren't there?
Yep.
So many.
Yes.
And I would be interesting to look at what, some map representation of this space. I don't know if there was one in the guide, because at this point I was just like, once I got those keys, I was like, nothing can touch me. Like, I'm just going to brute force my way through the end of this game. So I don't know if there was like rhyme or reason to it, but I was just walking and portaling and walking and killing stuff. And eventually you find, so I think it might not have been as confusing as it felt, if that makes sense. That like, if you kind of just kept ambling through, eventually you were going to get there. I kept fighting dragons, and I guess that was a good thing.
Yeah, that's what you do. You fight dragon, and then red dragon, and then zombie, which now has 2 heads. And the other ones didn't have.
I was just saying, it looks like a skeleton. No, the others definitely didn't, which is really funny.
But just put them together, and then you get zombie dragon.
But what did have exactly 2 heads and moved in exactly the same way was the Hydra from the very beginning.
God, that's right.
They just skeletonized it. The dragons I thought were interesting. That was a note that I had in here. They had really small hitbox. Was it just their face?
It was just the head. It was just the head. Yeah.
Which was, I think, added an element of challenge to it and was kind of fun. Pretty hilarious that they had dragon and red dragon in a game where they knew there would be no color.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like what makes this a red dragon?
It's just the same sprite. I think maybe it
was
a little bit of change.
Right, yeah. You had to buy the Nintendo Power Guide to know.
There you go.
But those dragons, and then specifically Julius later, which we'll talk about, because I was so underleveled and didn't have the resources, I had to save state my way, brute force through this game. Like I would play, get a few hits, save, play again, get hit or whatever, load back up, and just run through until I was just flawless going through this thing. Because like if I take one more hit, I'm dead. And I'll continue that story when we get to Julius because it comes into play.
So I think that's so interesting that you did eventually get to that point, because my recollections of this game from when I played it the first time as a little kid was that, but like 20% of the way in. Like I
can see that.
I wasn't leveling. I was spending way too much time just trying to avoid and not fight stuff, and I got too deep into the game. And it's not to dig your way out of that is to fight a bunch of overpowered enemies, right? And it's really not fun.
Well, I was surprised fighting those dragons specifically. Like I beat all 3 dragons finally. I never leveled up. I did not get enough EXP to level up. And I was like,
do you like to know why? Because
the bosses don't have any?
Each.
Yeah.
No, the bosses all do. The dragons specifically give you 0.
That's what I came to realize, or at least suspect, because there's no way those 3 dragons would give me not enough to get one single level between the 3 of them. So that makes sense. Or it doesn't make sense, but I understand that that's probably the case.
So were you just dodging like the trash mobs everywhere?
Oh yeah. Oh no. Oh, you mean no. You mean the enemies along the way?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. And that's what's surprising to me. But I will say that because I was following the guide, I was going to where I needed to go without getting lost too much. So I think that cut down on my leveling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we kill those dragons.
Yep. I think it's the top.
Yeah.
You find the lady.
Oh yeah. Find the lady. She transforms your sword.
That I wanted to talk about, which was sorry to drag us back, but there's near the end of the tower. There's a room where there's like switch tiles around the perimeter, and you have to freeze the ninja guy in there and put him on one tile.
Yep.
One particular tile.
How the fuck would you know that? They all look the same.
I figured this out on my own, and I felt really clever.
Did you just push it all around every single tile until it happened?
No. Well, the first thing I was doing is because sometimes those switches will actuate with you, the character. You don't necessarily
walk around.
And so if you run around the perimeter, nothing happens. But I noticed this. Your character like stutters when he walks over the switch.
Oh,
there's a little
clever
visual
boy.
itch. He actually like stops running and then starts again, sort of thing, when he hits that one, and that's how you tell. Because I had the same thing where I was like, "What the shit am I supposed to be doing in here?" And the guide tells you where to put it, but I couldn't get over it. I exited and came back because like I got to understand that this cannot be, and then my note here is that like that's something incredibly subtle that the game never taught you. You never had to know it, but here you did, which again, sort of the ambition. I think them getting ahead of themselves. It's like if this had been executed, it would have been a masterstroke, right? If they had taught you this 3 dungeons ago or something like that, or hinted at it, or came up with some other contrived thing. It was a really neat, subtle detail that I'm sure infuriated a lot of people because I think it wasn't properly executed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But then you talk to the ghost lady after that, right?
You do. And you finally get Excalibur.
You get to use Excalibur for precisely one fight. Well, I guess multiple rounds.
3 fights, multiple rounds, but because this is an end of a JRPG, you got to have multi-phase fight.
Well, at least we're not fighting God.
Yeah, no, not yet. Definitely not fighting God in the monasteries, it seems. But this is where you were speaking to like how challenging it is because you're underleveled and stuff. A thing that from playing lots of JRPGs that I actually really do enjoy is being super strong at the end of the game and just wiping the floor with the final boss. I mean, that's what they let you do.
Yeah.
And I kind of just wipe the floor with this boss. I'm gonna say.
Oh my god, dude! Well,
tell us your experience. I want to hear.
Jesus. So I can't remember if it's true that between the Tower of Gemma and going to Julius, you can't like restock stuff.
No, you're done. There are 4 elephants to kill along the way, and that's
that's it.
And apparently,
yeah.
one of them dropped something cool, but like my guys didn't. So okay.
So this is my problem, is that I had wiped a lot of my stuff with the dragons, and then I have to go fight Julius without any sort of restock. So I have no mana, none. I have nothing for the whole fight.
You couldn't get back into the Tower of Gemma?
So I didn't try. So
Okay.
I'm wondering if maybe that was possible.
Yeah.
It's like a farmed ether or whatever. But I just kept going forward. So I had no mana, and by the time I was through into the second fight, I couldn't get hit once. Just the way that I had stated. I fucked up one time where I saved my mental load, and I was like, fuck, now I have no health. So I had to keep restarting and then do it perfectly by the end. Where you get to the third phase, and then you get east in my story, but
Yes.
I forget. What is her name? Fuji, okay, yeah. So you get the main female character, and then she can heal you. I'm like, oh, thank God. And then you heal, and it's like for 10 or 20 or whatever. It was like, oh, fuck. But you can keep doing it, and when that third phase comes up and it like shoots its hands out and then shoots the fireballs, there was so much time to be able to heal myself back up. It just felt like after not being able to drink water for years and years, I was just like drinking, and it felt so delicious. I was like, I have all the health I fucking need to bash this guy. So I would just heal up, save, and then just wipe him with Excalibur. That felt the third phase was the easiest of the 3 for me.
It was pretty easy.
The first one was what I thought was a cakewalk, and then the second one was, and then that's really interesting. You guys say that. I thought the third one was the hardest. But I don't know if I was just cheesing the other ones. So go ahead.
Pattern pretty well on the third one. Like I can avoid it pretty easily and be like, all right, if I'm just taking my time here, I'm not really taking damage. I just let my bar charge, use the sword back and forth across the screen. That's what I was doing. And it worked really well.
That never got old. Every single time that dude flew across the screen with that sword, I was like, this is it.
Let me tell you, the only time it didn't work is during the second phase, which I thought was the hardest phase. That's when I spent the most time on. I would use that, and then his movement pattern sometimes was so quick that he would come back to where I would land, and then he'd hit me and I'd die. And I was like, fuck, because I couldn't get hit. So I was like redoing. But the patterns I started to memorize pretty well, like the shooting, you shoot the lightning and jump down at you and whatever else. I enjoyed it. Just that added challenge that I unfortunately gave for myself made it more interesting than I think just like face tanking.
Accidentally cheesed the hell out of the end of this game.
Oh yeah.
No,
you don't me. Yeah.
By save scumming your way through.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was no fucking chance. Otherwise, I would have beat this game. Well, that's not true. I probably would have reset somewhere and been able to get, restock my stuff, and I would have been fine. But I don't know how much I would have to redo. So I was like, I'm just going. I'm brute forcing this. I'm getting through it. Thank God. I don't know how I could play this game as a kid without any of this. No guides, no save states. That's just, It was a great game. But I feel like the level of challenge, if you weren't able to farm levels early on, maybe was more difficult than I would expect.
The official art for the second stage of Julius is also pretty radical. He has weird tentacles all over him, and his chest plate becomes like weird eyeballs, and his stomach is a mouth, but his head also has a mouth.
Of course.
And he has dinosaur feet and hands. That's pretty awesome. And I don't know what was the thing at the end. What was the third form supposed to be? Is it he's like a lion face?
Like a cloaked werewolf thing. I don't know.
Yeah. And he's got who's Master Hand from Smash Brothers? He's got these.
Oh sure, the floating hands. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what that final form was. Like a spirit. I don't know.
What was weird was that when he first appears, he's in the tree.
Yeah.
And again, you could tell what they were sort of going for here was that he basically fused his consciousness, all of his malice and hatred into the mana tree, and you're basically fighting the tree. I thought, because right when he appears, it looks like it's a face in a tree.
Yeah.
But then the face starts flying around, so that's sort of broken. But At least what happens next is that I think that's what it was supposed to kind of be. But
That's
other than
silly,
that
though.
leads
People don't
to-
become trees.
wow.
But I do feel like that leads to the ending of the game of like you fought him and now the tree is gone.
Oops.
Which
And then
is
we
like,
need to grow a new
oh
one.
no, yeah, you heard I haven't finished another Mana game, so I'm like I assume this is actual lore through all of them that the.
Are there other? I mean, if it's the last, so is that all of the other trees we think are in fact Fuji, and she's just monitoring her way through time?
Could be. I don't know though. He just said that these aren't directly related.
Okay.
Yeah, because the previous
Thematically-
4... Sorry, go ahead.
Like thematically, the Mana games are related, but I don't know how much they tie serialize together.
It's like Final Fantasy. I think they don't. I think the previous 4 visions of Mana are the conceit is that you are like a random spirit guardian or whatever assigned to go to the Mana tree to you have to go every 4 years to revitalize it. And I was like, oh, does that mean like it's dead in 4 years and you got to plant yourself in the ground and grow into a tree yourself? No, that's not what's happening in Visions of Mana, apparently. So I was like, all right, maybe that's not a thing everywhere else. But in this one, it's like, okay, we made it. Look, Fuji, you're going to stick you in the ground and you're going to grow into a tree. Is that okay?
Yeah, because that was her mom was a tree.
Yeah.
The tree. And okay, so I have a bunch of thoughts on this because when we were very, very first starting out, back to our episode 0, I think one of my comments was that I remember very little of the actual gameplay of this, but I remember how it made me feel when I finally finished it. Number 1, I remember being stupid hard. And number 2, I remember it being very emotionally affecting. And I think this was like a total like twist turn kind of thing for the story to go in. Like that was like a very profound sort of sacrifice that, and they don't spend a lot of time, but you know, Fuji is with you for almost the whole game, and you know, she comes and goes and gets kidnapped some, but you know, you save her at the beginning and you guys do the pillow talk in Ket's Manor or whatever, and I don't know, I felt like they put some stuff into her. And then for her to get, you know, Arbor Day'd at the end was I don't know, man, that was rough. And as a little kid, I was like, wow, that's something. I had feels about that. And
I mean, it's unexpected for sure.
Yeah,
like it definitely goes to a bittersweet kind of ending that is at this time probably not the typical ending for a game, because games are about like you're the hero and you're successful and everything's good at the end. So it is kind of bold to say like, hey, we're not gonna make it so everything is okay at the end.
And not just that she's a tree, but now Sumo for the rest of his life is sort of, by this experience they've had and by sort of taking up the mantle of the Geminites and all of that stuff, like this is his life, is protecting this tree. Like it never goes back to well, I guess it wasn't that great. He was a slave at the beginning of the game, but
fighting in the fight pits.
But that this is this thing that has changed him forever, and it sort of carries with him. And all of a sudden now I thought back to like, because you meet 2 Geminites. There's Chiba, and who's the one at the beginning? Bogard?
I think so, Bogard, because he comes back a couple times,
And they're like kind of curmudgeon-y and kind of, I don't know, right? They're these like sort of hermit dudes that live alone, and they tell you this crazy story about this like holy war that we fought a long time ago. And with, you know, you sort of blink and you miss it, you've become them. Like you can see your future in what Bogard and Chiba became, because they dedicated their lives to protecting this dang tree. So I thought that was maybe I'm injecting some of my own like headcanon into this sort of deal, but I thought that was a pretty good ending for this game, for what it was working with. I thought that was pretty incredible.
I felt overall, like, I'm really glad that you suggested this, Tom. This is probably not a game that I would have played, even though I played Secret of Mana as a kid, didn't beat it, but I enjoyed what I played of Secret of Mana. But I'm really happy we did. There's a lot more to this, and obviously there's some of the people working on this game worked on other games that we like Chrono Trigger, other Final Fantasies, etc. But you can see the DNA of some of those games here, and some of the, you know, they're stretching to do some really cool stuff that doesn't always land in this game, but the ideas are there, and this has to happen for them to do
All of that.
the really cool stuff
Yeah.
later. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm happy we played it.
Same. I'm happy to have experienced this one because I never did in the past. So.
And I'm glad I didn't in the past with no save states.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and just the last thing on the story, as if they hadn't twisted the knife enough, right? The credits, and you kind of have like Sumo going back and like he visits some of the characters from throughout the game, but the very end before that splash screen that you shared, where he releases the chocobo back into the wild, and the chocobo doesn't want to go, and he pushes him before he leaves him there with the other chocobo, like. Why are you doing this to me, Square?
But the chocobo has like robot legs. It's not.
It is not of nature anymore.
Will the other chocobo accept it? That was what's going through my head.
Oh my god. That's funny. There were certainly emotional moments for, frankly, bad writing in this game. Like there were nuggets of that throughout.
The ultimate last thing I have about the writing is, did anybody appreciate the abbreviation for the sword in your
Oh my god.
menu?
XCALBR or whatever. Like, man, you were really limited on characters.
Yes, they were.
But it looks like so bastardized.
I wonder what it was in Japanese. I wonder what
if
the
it
name
was
of the
Excalibur.
sword was in.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Excalibur. If that's if
They
that
have
was just a localization choice. I mean,
Yeah.
like famous sword
Yeah.
that is known to
Musamane or whatever,
Western. Like, what is? Did the Japanese have a specific famous Japanese sword name?
Masamune. No, that's
It
not.
could be Masamune. I don't know.
Well, it came up later in Chrono Trigger. I believe that was one of the swords in Chrono Trigger.
It was. It's a pretty standard sword through Final Fantasies. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think they tried really hard with what they could do and they clearly. I mean, a lot of games at this time were not trying to do story like this at all.
Yeah.
So good on them for at least stretching and trying. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, they took a big swing, but it was certainly not a miss. It wasn't a miss, you know?
No. As you said, like, Katase especially went on to do a lot of things.
Okay, so it is back to the sword. Sorry, I was just checking on this. Looks like the phonetic version of this is Eku Sukariba. So yeah, I think that it's Excalibur.
It's Excalibur.
And it's in nearly every single Final Fantasy game.
It is. They put Excalibur. Excalibur is another sword in there. It's just I didn't know if it was this or if they. Again, certain things clearly named here are bridging the Final Fantasy, but also being when it was westernized, things got changed somewhat. But that's cool. It is actually Excalibur.
I just Googled to see what it was called in Japanese as you were talking about that. Obviously, you had the answer there, but I found a legendsoflocalization.com website / Final Fantasy Adventure. I don't know if you've seen this.
That's a great site.
There's a piece here, content policy changes. We encountered a number of things that were changed to adhere to Nintendo of America's content policies at the time, and there's one screen here where in the game that we played it says, "I hear that the Tree of Mana is very beautiful." But here, what was cut was a reference to dying. He originally said that he wanted to see the tree at least one more time before he dies.
So
I think there's a couple more screens here that have something similar where like you would get the vibe early on, like, oh, this is not maybe going to end happy kind of thing. And then slaves and all mentions of slaves and slavery were changed and dropped. Instead of slaves, they were fighters from the pit. Wow, there's a bunch of changes here. This is wild.
Oh, this looks awesome. I'm going to dig into this.
Yeah, I could spend a lot of hours on this website. Some things were unintentionally funny, like learning slep from the Book of Sleep. Freaking typo or whatever. Learn to slap.
Well, they couldn't fit more than that many characters in the menu.
In the menu, probably. That's probably why. Yeah.
Yep.
But it doesn't matter. I used cure and nuke, and I only used nuke once. I used cure the rest of the game. I didn't use any other fucking spell.
By the end, I was just using cure pretty much exclusively.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There was when you get the fire spell, you have to use it. There's a bunch of guys.
And ice. There were a couple times you had to use ice. Yeah, that's right.
You use ice. Lightning you never had to use for anything.
I didn't use it at all. Yeah.
It works the same as ice, but again, the sort of the half-baked elemental system here. There wasn't enough. They didn't give you enough feedback on when it was like when you were getting like a critical hit or something like that. Because I was on that boss page that we were looking at. They're like, oh, he's weak to this or that, the other thing. And the only way you would know that is if you randomly picked that weapon and then killed that boss, and then that knowledge is sort of, and it went faster than if you had, like, you'd have to fight the boss multiple times in order to know that, I guess.
Yeah.
But
I'm reading a little more here. Anthony, you talked about the GBA remake was like a kind of I don't know, expansion of the story in some way.
Yeah.
Do you remember you played it, right? Or
we were talking like over a decade ago. So
yeah. But do you remember the names Duke and Elena?
Nope.
Because apparently Sumo and Fuji were Duke and Elena.
Duke and Elena. All right.
And then they had a novelization of it called Sword of Mana in 2 parts, which is pretty interesting.
I assume that never got localized.
No, it's only in Japanese, yeah.
Yeah.
So, wow. This is awesome.
This site, I hadn't heard of this site before, but oh no. No.
Yeah.
Time sink, man. Time sink.
There's a ton of good stuff on there about the NES Legend of Zelda. When I typed in Legends
I've
of
seen this book.
It's a book. Yeah.
Yeah, The Legend of Zelda. Because I've seen it.
That one?
Yeah, Legends of Localization, The Legend of Zelda. I've seen it on Fangamer, where it links you to. If you go at the top of Legends of Localization, they have books. If you click book 1, The Legend of Zelda, it takes you to Fangamer. And I'm like, oh, I've seen this book before. Okay.
This is so cool. Legends of
They've done that. Earthbound. That's cool. And Undertale.
Wow. That's wild. Yeah, this is cool. Okay. Lots of good stuff. Oh, Super Mario RPG's got a comparison here. Earthbound, yep. Okay, this is cool. Cool. Well, anyway, we are diverging. We are rabbit holing very in real time here. But overall, awesome. Like, great game. Glad we played it. Any final thoughts from both of you before I move into the intro?
I just had a question for either of you. Are either of you going to dabble at least in Secret of Mana to see how you feel about the next game?
I immediately started playing Secret of Mana.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I want to play more of this. So I played probably half an hour.
I plan to, because when I got my Switch later. Like I didn't get it. I got it a couple of years after it released. And one of the first carts I bought was this collection of Mana, because it had Final Fantasy Adventure. Oh, I can't believe I never told this part of the story now. I don't have this Game Boy cart anymore because I lent it to a friend, and then that friend moved away, and it went with. And so when I saw that this was coming out for the Switch, I was like, it's like a can't miss for me, because I had all these memories tied up of beating that and thinking it was really cool as hard and feeling great about it. And so this was one of the first carts I bought for the Switch. I started playing Final Fantasy Adventure, and after like an hour and a half, I was like, shit, this is too hard. No, I don't want to. This isn't fun. I put it down. I thought, let me then at least try Secret of Mana. And I got at least halfway through that game, and then eventually I sort of faded on it. But with I want to carry the momentum, and I probably try and take another swing at that. It'll be really interesting to see how the mechanics and stuff evolve from there. And the last one on the I read a whole article earlier this week, and it was, because is it Visions of Mana? That's
Trials of Mana?
Well, yeah. Trials of Mana is on the collection we have. Visions of Mana is the one coming out.
The new one.
The new one coming out on the 29th, I believe, of this month.
Trials has had a remake made a couple of years ago, a 3D version. And the article was, should you play the 3D remake, or should you play the, because when it came out on collection, that was the first it had never been localized before, and
Correct.
so for this game to get localized like 30 years after the fact was kind of crazy. And they compared them, and I can't remember which one they said was better, but or depending on what you were looking for, one was better than the other. But what they said was that it was sort of undeniable when you play the collection version, that it has that je ne sais quoi of 90s JRPG on the Super Nintendo that is hard to capture in other places, and it's a very distinct kind of flavor that you don't get other places. And I was reading that, I was like, damn, I really want to play that game. That sounds like fun.
Well, this whole thing was fun, and games are fun, video games are fun, and digging through our backlog is fun. Finding some gems, this was certainly one of them. Thanks everyone for following along with this journey through Final Fantasy Adventure. Hope you loved it. If you did, please rate it on your podcast service of choice. The next sequence is going to be Witcher 2, with Scott is returning. Anyone else is welcome to join if you want to dig into Witcher 2, but Scott's committed to that. That will be a while. That's a big game. And then around, for our time, October, we are all going to be back. Tom, Anthony, and if we can get Travis back, we're going to do the first Final Fantasy. We're going to do Final Fantasy.
Well, I'm excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. The Final Fantasy that was supposed to be the Final Fantasy if it didn't work out, but it worked out.
That is an urban legend. That's not true.
It's not true? Oh, no, come on. That hurts my heart.
It was probably Sakaguchi's last game. Because he hadn't had a big success. Like, he'd had okay stuff. That was his thing. Is like, if this doesn't work out, I'm gonna go back to school or become like a normal salaryman.
Sure.
Drop out of games. But the only reason it's called Final Fantasy, which we'll preview for that, the original name they wanted was Fighting Fantasy.
Oh.
And it was already taken in the West. And so they wanted alliteration.
Sure.
And so they're like, Final Fantasy, that's what it's going to be. So no, there's no, this is not Square's, was not Square's like last game.
There's some conflation between that guy's last game and Square's last game. Got it.
Yes.
But it's coming back. They're reprinting or maybe printing for the first time in the US. The Pixel remasters 1 through 6.
It's a reprint.
Is it a reprint? Okay.
The original release for the West was so tiny.
Yeah.
And it was only through, I think, Square Enix store.
Right, their website.
Yeah.
So Tom's picking that up. I think Anthony, we already have you're picking it up, or we already have the digital, whatever. I mean, we're all playing Final Fantasy. The first one, our time will be hitting it around October right now. And in our time, it's the middle of August. But that will be publishing probably at the end of this year, or maybe end of November or so. So looking forward to that. If you like our podcast, please come back for all of that. Witcher 2, go backwards for Undertale and Final Fantasy 12. This is just becoming a Final Fantasy podcast in some way. Any last words before we sign off?
I'll just say thanks for going out on a limb. I'm glad you guys enjoyed this, and it was a lot of fun talking about it with you for the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I want to say thanks for suggesting it. If it wasn't for this, I probably would have never touched this game.
Yeah,
so,
me too.
Pretty excited.
Glad we did. Thanks, Tom. And thanks, Anthony. And thanks, everyone. We will see you next week with a new game.